My first year in real estate, I had made so much money. Nothing in life is just gonna get handed to you. Have you ever expected something on a career or expected something in a relationship and it was completely different? Before we start this episode, I would love to ask you to please rate, review, and follow on all platforms where you're listening to. And if you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and hit the little red button to subscribe below and also the bell. Now let's get into the episode. Welcome to the 100% Life Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Gomez. Let's get right into today's topic, which is expectations. Let's go. I'll take you back to 2006, the tender age of 24. Guess what? I decided to get my real estate license because you know what? Real estate was the thing there. Literally, it was the thing. So I'm going to tell you the story. Went to take my license, went to take my test. Super happy. I passed the first time. I was so excited. And guess what? In the first 30 days of me being a real estate agent, I did my first big deal, got me $500,000 in commission. So happy, super happy. I went out and was celebrating. I just went out, took a week to Vegas. I went to a shopping spree. When I got back home, I went and got the craziest Mercedes you can think of, the biggest, the S-Class with all the bells and whistles. It was it. And guess what? A week later after that, I got another big deal, and within 30 days, I made another $500,000. So happy. People couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. It was just crazy, crazy, crazy. Then I would say, you know what? Let's go ahead and buy that house that we've always wanted to, GL. Let's do it. Let's get that house. Got the big house. Got everything. Got some toys, too. Got like a third car. We got the two-seater sports car, red. Just cranking that up. And then we went to go get a boat. Let's go get a boat. Got the boat, got some ATVs, we got some jet skis, and everything was great. And guess what? A week after that, got another big deal. There we go. Another $200,000 in the bank. It was crazy. And you know what? We were having such a great time, buying, my suits, buying my pocket squares. I was looking good. My confidence level was up. And you know what? It was an amazing thing. And by the time I hit my first year in real estate, I had made so much money. People could not believe it. And it was just a great success. Parties all the time, VIPs, the clubs, we had, dinner parties, we had, house parties, we had all sorts of parties. And you know what? Life was great. But that's not what happened. Let me tell you the real story. And then I'll tell you why I told that exaggerated story. So here it is. Got my license in 2006. When I went to go take the test, I failed once. Went to take it again. I failed twice. Third time's a charm? Yes, third time was a charm. I finally was able to pass, okay? This kid, 24 years old, which was myself, ripped jeans with my American Eagle shirt, spiky hair, like I mentioned in my previous podcast, went out there and tried to get my deals. And the truth of the fact is I didn't have really any clients. And it took me probably about 6 months, 5-6 months to even have a first meeting with a client. And my first deal probably closed for a grand total of probably, I think, $230,000 purchase price, which was roughly about, $5,000 in commission, probably about 7 to 8 months later. Almost a year into my career. It really took me, time to learn the business. I didn't really have a mentor. It took me a little bit to get in there. I still had the same car throughout the same time. Didn't change the car at all. And didn't really get another big house or anything close to that time. Literally about a year and a half later, we experienced the biggest economic crash that the real estate market has ever seen here in the United States. So during that time, lost houses, lost cars, started from zero. And fast forward, obviously a few years later, made it, stuck with the business. And now we're 16 years later, we have built such a great empire here in Central Florida and beyond to what it is. So what is the point of telling me the story from the first exaggerated story to where it is now? And that's where we come back to expectations. I see it all the time on social media. People say, "Oh, you're a broker, real estate broker, real estate agent. You're making the easy money." And the truth of the fact is, it is not. What is expected for that type of scenario, the public expects, us to just, get your license and, you have a whole bunch of money just dropping into you, is the complete opposite of what the reality is. The hard work, the knowledge that we had to have and learn throughout the years to then build a business that was sustainable took us a long time. When I'm talking about expectation is basically that there's different types of expectations. So the first one is what people expect to happen in a certain situation or in a certain relationship or in a certain scenario. And that right there is exactly what you have to take into consideration when you're talking about business, when you're talking about, just life, okay? Because the reality is the expectation of what somebody's expecting to happen, it's completely different from the reality. When you talk about, I don't know, a lawyer, you expect them to be super ultra rich, right? And making tons of money, making lots of money here and there. And the reality is, it could be true for most of them. But have you ever talked to a struggling lawyer that cannot get business, that hasn't found a niche? Absolutely. Same thing with us in real estate, like I mentioned to you. For people think this is easy money, and it's really not, right? All the hard work and hours that we had to put into it. In my case, talking about expectation, I actually pretty much fell into that same expectation of what I thought a real estate agent was. And I could have fallen into that maybe a comfort level where, I kind of just laid back because I said, this is, gonna happen eventually. So let me just kind of lay back. Okay. If I would have taken the knowledge that I have now, obviously talking to my younger self, and I would have maybe, studied a little bit more, had searched for a mentor, done things a little bit differently, I probably would have gone to my result, that exaggerated result, probably in a certain timeline that I had. So I didn't because of comfort level, and I was expecting to jump into the real estate business and just have it just handed to me. And the truth is that nothing in life is just going to get handed to you. So my expectation of what I thought was going to happen when I got that real estate license was completely far from the truth. To the point is, and the timing that I got into, which was about 2006, a year and a half later is when the crash of 2008 have, okay? Side note, if you don't know what the crash of 2008 is, I mean, you probably heard of it, maybe the deep ends of it. I talk about it a long time. There's a movie called The Big Short, which everybody should watch, which explains it. Great movie, by the way. Steve Carell, Brad Pitt, Ryan Gosling, explains to you what happened in that sense. So in my timing of what I expected and the comfort level that I actually got into, got me to a situation where my expectation fell very, very short, and very quickly, within a year and a half, the market crashed, and then we had to reinvent ourselves. And thank God we did, because now where we're at, right? So that expectation that I had for that particular career, was completely different. So have you ever expected something on a career or expected something in a relationship and it was completely different, right? And that is something that you have to take in consideration when it comes to life and business, that most of the time what you're expecting is probably not the reality, okay? That's when we take now expectation. This is another perspective, and we must do things differently, and furthermore, react on what people are expecting us to do. And this is when the 200% life comes into play, or the concept of being 200% all the time is doing things far more than what you're expected to do. If I, in my situation, had done things a little bit differently of what was expected of me as a real estate agent back in 2006, I probably would have cracked the code on certain things. I probably would have, exceeded the extra mile to do what I needed to do to make my career successful. Okay? So that's step number one. Doing things far more than what's expected of you is going to get your expectation probably closer to where you think you're going to be at. Okay? So it's not just let me jump in because everybody else is doing it. Let me jump in, and it's expected for me to make this much if I, just jump into this situation. But once you're in that situation now, doing things far more than what is expected of you is the key now to getting to that next step, to getting a successful career, successful relationship, successful scenario of whatever you're trying to do. Okay. So again, let's break this down. If you're in and you're expected to, prospect for an hour, do it for 2 hours, do it for 3 hours. If you're expected to go door knocking, do it for 50 doors, let's do 100 doors. Whatever that scenario is, are you expected to make, 50 calls? Then exceed the expectation and do 100 calls, do 150 calls. And your result is going to come a lot quicker. Okay, so your authority figure, your boss or whoever you have, looking over you, or if you're your own boss, okay, maybe it's your spouse looking over you at that point, expecting, what did you do? You wanted to go in business on your own, so what are you doing? So now it's time to do far more than what is expected of you. So expectations have different perspective. What you think is going to happen, but now doing more than what's expected of you. The third type of expectation I want to talk to you about is you thinking or expecting for somebody to react or do, or a certain situation to turn out the way that you think it's going to turn out. I believe right now we're in a certain period in the world where we do things and act on things because we're expecting for somebody else to react a certain way. And when it comes down to it, they actually don't, right? The biggest letdown, the biggest kind of like disappointment, I expected somebody to do this because I did this and they didn't do it, okay? When we talk about relationships, I gave so much to this relationship and it came out to be that this person didn't give it back because I was expecting to get the same treatment back. That right there needs to have a balance. Your three levels of, or your three levels or definitions of expectations need to have a balance. So the first one, like I talked to you about, was, expecting to get into something and just not acting at all on it, right? I'm just going to get into it, but I'm not going to put any extra effort. That's number one. So you got to balance that out with the second step by doing exactly the opposite of what people are expecting you to do. So if they're expecting you to do a certain amount of calls or a certain amount of activity or production, now you're gonna double that, all right? 200%, right? Double it, right? So that's gonna get you results faster. And then the final piece is getting the expectation of what you think somebody else, especially, is gonna react in a situation, and balance that out with thinking maybe a little bit less, okay? I'm expecting this person to react this way, or I'm expecting this person to give me this back. You need to tone that down a little bit. Okay, they're going to give me this much back. I'm going to expect them to give me this much instead. A little bit lower, right? So if it happens that they give you what exactly you were originally expecting, great. But if they don't, you're not let down and you're prepared for plan B. So you have your three definitions of expectations laid out to you as I'm explaining to you today. Have a balance on each, and then the expectations of when you're stepping into a situation, what you should do in a situation, and what to expect from people will have a perfect balance, and you will be successful in whatever you do. Guys, I'll leave you with that. The 200% Life Podcast. See you in the next one.